Everyone come on back and we'll get started. Meredith and Joel will introduce themselves and take us through the afternoon. Thanks.
Okay, all you stragglers outside, please come in. Oh, we're gonna take names of people who walk in late. Anyways, happy day 2 afternoon. So I don't know what everybody else has been thinking in their downtime, but I've been thinking, okay, what if we have our third Flash Drought workshop in a few years, right? We've done the first one, 2020. Here's our second one. What will we really do that's new? And I've decided we're going to do a Flash Drought bingo card game. And I've been writing down words. We have everything from wilting to, well, we have a lot of great words. But right in the center, the free card is going to be regionalization, because that has come up constantly over and over and over again. How important it is to understand flash drought in the context of where you are. And so I think this is the perfect timing, right? We've had these dialogues for a day and a half, and now we're really going to roll up our sleeves and talk a little bit about what does it really look like in our region as a region. So we're going to have an opportunity to have 2 breakouts where you're going to come together. You're going to meet hopefully some new colleagues and some old colleagues from across the spectrum of research to practitioners. And we're really going to talk about, okay, what does it look like in my region? What do we have? What's working well? What can we improve on? And what will we do next? This gets back to something that Mark raised yesterday. Now what? And so we're going to kick this off first, though, by me figuring this out. Okay. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. How do I go back? What just happened? Okay. Okay, I guess this is it. We're going to kick this off just by letting you know a little bit about what the Southeast is doing. Is there a slide deck for the presentation? How do I bring that up? Oh, okay. I'm good. I'm ready. Thank you. That was great. Okay. Seriously, I can do this. All right. So the 2020 workshop identified the importance of regionalization and suggested as a priority action item, as Marina identified in the first day, to utilize these regional networks we have that NIDIS helps coordinate, the Regional Drought Early Warning System networks. How many people here would you consider are actively engaged in your dues? Raise your hand. How many people are aware of what a regional dues is? How many people came to this meeting never hearing about a dues? Okay, good. We have a couple of honest people here. That's great. So these are regional networks that bring together not just the information and the people to improve drought early warning, planning and preparedness, and opportunity to share between states. And so the Southeast, after the 2020 meeting, we thought this would be a really great time to just take the recommendations from that workshop and jump in. So flash drought, why do we even care about flash drought in the Southeast? Did I miss a slide? Sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna roll with it. Okay, so you've already heard from a number of people. You heard from Pam, you heard from Lee, you heard from Klaus that we've had a number of these flash drought events that have all looked very, very different in the Southeast. And it is starting to get picked up quite a bit by the media. It's here's an example of something I pulled from the Weather Channel, for example, from 2019. This caught us by surprise because this was a fall flash drought. I'm not going to go into what was unique about it, in terms of the onset. It was actually not having a tropical storm contributed to that. So you trade one hazard for another. But this happened in 2019. And then I came aboard the NIDIS team in 2020. And I was asked to help coordinate 2 existing small regional networks, dues networks, that were in the Apalachicola, Chattahoochee, Flint Basin, and that was in the coastal Carolinas. And what I heard when I talked to all the partners, the state partners, federal partners, academic partners, was that 2 things. One, we really want to share more broadly with across the broader region in the States because we share so many similarities. And number two is flash drought. It was the common thread that I heard across the Southeast. We're seeing more of these. We want to understand them better and we want to prepare for them. And so because of that, we incorporated flash drought pretty prominently in our 4-year strategic action plan to help guide the work of NIDIS and our partners in the region. And so in response to that kind of high interest in flash drought, we went ahead and we thought it was really useful to just have a standalone conversation. We didn't just want to wrap this up into a session with a partners meeting. We really wanted to have a technical discussion of what flash drought is in the Southeast. And so last March, we pulled together, it ended up being virtually, a group of a number of experts to answer these 3 questions. And I think these are very common threads of what we've already heard today. Can we define the unique characteristics of flash drought in the Southeast? Can we assess and synthesize our current state of monitoring and predicting? And can we identify any additional needs for flash drought in the region? And so we're really fortunate. This workshop had a huge range of participation across state partners, federal partners, and research and academic. We ended up collecting a ton of information through Jamboards. They're about half day each. We also had the day after that, a separate discussion just on soil moisture. And then we pulled those 2 communities together, the soil moisture flash drought community together, because as we know, they're very much related. And so with that, I think I'm going to call my colleague. So this is Lee Ellenberg, who you've met. He is the assistant state climatologist for the state of Alabama. And he's going to talk to you just very briefly about some of what we heard from these workshops and where we're moving. And I'm really excited because a lot of the recommendations that are coming out of this group about what we should do next is stuff that we're planning to do. And so we've been exchanging text messages through a number of us. We're like, Southeast dues for the win. So, but we really look forward to sharing this with you and hearing your input too. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Meredith, and thanks for inviting me to come speak on this and on behalf of the whole Southeastern Dues in our conversation that we had. So a lot of thought went into that, and it was a really great meeting. And so, as Meredith mentioned, I just wanted to provide some of the outcomes and results of that conversation and the continuing conversation that went through in-person meetings as well. And like Meredith said, like I promise we didn't write these today. Like you're going to see a lot of reoccurring themes that we've had the exact same conversations. And so I think that just really, exemplifies this level of regionalization and what that looks like. So naturally, just like we started, there's no single definition when it comes to flash drought. A lot of different metrics are used in the Southeast, whether it's just the USDM drought category, precip deficits, and then there's a very specific intensity on agricultural impacts. The definition again will change on the impacts, which is what we've discussed, and on the season. So something that was really important, that this concept of timing continues to kind of bubble up in our conversation, and so there's no consensus because there's probably several different kinds of flash droughts. And there's different uniques. And again, back to agriculture, sub-regional differences. In the Southeast, we have a wide variation of irrigation, for example. Georgia, Mississippi have a large amounts of irrigation. South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, we're way more dryland-based agriculture. So that opens up a whole nother vulnerability to flash droughts. Again, talking about the timing of when those occur during the seasons. And how do I switch? Perfect. I think I edited this morning, and I think one slide got missed. So sorry about that. The existing products. So we use soil moisture is by far the most commonly mentioned metric to capture flash drought in the Southeast. A lot of it's using some of the SMAP products or the list-based model products, trying to understand, because we see a huge difference between precipitation and evaporative demand, and in the summer times, especially around agriculture, that combination can really is what really drives flash droughts from an agriculture perspective. Precipitation, temperature predictions, and anomalies. the vegetation indexes, the lawn and garden index, again, trying to get a small like surface to 20 centimeter soil moisture availability and what that looks like, how often you need precip to accompany that, and how often does your evaporative demand overcome that. And then all the way down to irrigation scheduling calls, phone calls. I think that's probably from Pam, you know, how we utilize all this kind of information across the Southeast. And so again, this is a conversation in the Southeast. This was in Atlanta and online a couple months before, of what's being used, and just to really drive home the context of what we're talking about in the Southeastern US. And so we came away with some real opportunities for improving and some next steps as far as this conversation. Obviously, improved understanding of flash droughts in the region. So, you know, one of the main things is, and we heard this in the last kind of group discussion, a historical evaluation of droughts, like what exactly has happened in the past, like what led up to flash droughts that we've seen, and having a historical perspective can help us. One, it can help us understand current conditions and what the likelihood of evolving into a next flash drought. And then the rates of changed preferred drought indicators to define flash drought for a specific and sub-regional unique areas. Again, when we talk about flash drought, it's very much impact based, and that is both in space and in time. Where is it more likely to occur, and when is it more likely to occur? Again, the impacts are extremely tied to that timing. All right, you know, we've seen several of the crop the crop calendars, the phenological curves of grasses or cropland. You know, the timing of that flash drought is really important. Another opportunity that we identified was observational networks. So expanding and improving on the data that we do have. Some areas have more coverage than others, and so this was an output that we want to really focus on. And I know NIDIS and NOAA in general are focusing and helping and fund some of these activities. And then the user perspective, so understanding the sector-specific interpretations of flash drought. So a lot of our conversation was around ag, but we had a lot of sectors there in the talks. And you know, I mean, I think there's been some really good conversations about when do you use the word flash drought, or how do you communicate flash drought. And I think from a farming perspective, a farmer knows what the difference of a 2-week period of rainfall deficit versus a season-wide drought, right? That's not, and maybe it's the, you know, the semantics of what you use, flash drought or whatnot, but understanding the differences between these kind, I think it's well known, and it's something that we experience in the Southeast pretty regular. It's not, you know, this is a 2-week dry period that could actually have really big impacts, or it could just be a 2-week dry period, but I think that's well known. And so how do we, what does that mean in terms of the user perspective? And then the last thing is the data integration. So we have a lot of these metrics, soil moisture, EDDI, the land surface models. And so the crop models, we have cropping system models that are run across the Southeast. So how do we integrate that into more comprehensive framework for decision making? So those were the main outcomes that we saw for improving the products, again, with a Southeastern context. So again, as Meredith mentioned, we did a lot of this in Jamboards and a lot of collaboration. So the flash drought needs, you can see there a couple things that I've already mentioned, but this was how we kind of garnered all this information, compiled this into this slide deck. And if you saw some of the work that Jazia and them did on the previous slide deck of talking about these intense short-term periods from an ag perspective. And so one of the outcomes that we're acting on right now through the support of NIDIS is a Southeastern Regional Assessment and Review. So to garner that first step, let's take a look. Let's take a 30-year, 20-year, you know, what the data allows us, assessment of flash drought over the past, say, 20 to 2000, I think is maybe a little bit further back if we're using some other data sets. So to characterize the flash drought again from a spatial context and a temporal context, and put it in the terms of risk in terms of agriculture. So we're going to take a long-term assessment of flash drought, tie that in with the timing of crops that we have, corn, cotton. Obviously, we can expand to a whole lot, but at first we'll start with a few major cropping systems or crops that we use and soil characteristics. And the output would both be a data set that modelers and researchers can use for validation and assessment, and then also a way to characterize the risk and vulnerability of flash drought in the Southeast, again, by both spatial and by time. And so another thing as a part of this process is we'll provide a Southeastern specific recommendations to current metrics that we use. We use ESI, we use the soil moisture products. And so are there certain things that are unique to Southeastern soil moisture or soil type characteristics that we could implant into these metrics to have a Southeastern perspective? And then the last thing is to really identify and acknowledge the monitoring gaps in the specific region. So this assessment has been distributed around the state climate offices around the Southeast and garnered feedback, and we're starting to make progress on really identifying the next steps for this assessment. Another idea that we identified from the dues is again the product evaluation with the Southeastern context. So access of the current suite of models that includes the drought monitor and all the things that we use to make those recommendations. Objective tools, again, I'm using the word integrate. So you can see soil moisture and ESI and precipitation and maybe other value-added model products like a cropping system model that's being run. How does that incorporate it into a broader drought assessment? And then again, I think this is again a reoccurring theme from the whole workshop thus far. Guidance for messaging on flash drought. Again, what does that look like, and who are we talking to? Again, I'm fairly confident that most farmers in the Southeast know what a flash drought is or can characterize it in a way that they know it. But what does that look like from communication throughout the year? Are there times of the year that we can say, hey, this is a more likely this chance, and for example, in June in Alabama, we're 40 to 50% of the time we actually have less rainfall than we have demand, right? So this is a hot spot for potential flash droughts. And so that's the kind of information that we want to get out there and help communicate to have these kind of preemptive at least ideas or warnings of where flash drought is most likely to occur. And again, a big emphasis on the when. And then lastly, having conversations with end users. That's what the Southeast Dues was able to bring about. I know this conversation that we had in the meeting that we had in Atlanta, I've heard several people talk about how integral and interesting it was. We had a panel of media. We had NPR, we had CNN, we had newspaper and local media. How do they understand flash drought? And so that was a huge component that we're going to take forward. And it's like one thing I remember is like the media does not care about news briefs from your university or from whatever, right? They're not looking for press releases. That's the last thing they look for. And it's just like, oh, well, that's what we do. And so anyway, just things like that, I think it really opened up. And it's this type of conversation that's, I think, made these ideas and our work go forward. So with that, I'll stop. And then, as we go into the breakouts, I think these are the type of discussions, like what kind of regional context can we bring to what we've talked about today, these ideas of messaging, of specific, regionalizations of, the soil types. And, in Alabama, or in the Southeastern, if it doesn't rain for a week at the right time, that is critical. And that can be, disastrous for dryland ag. So those types of, I think regionalizations, I think will be really important. And I think is the goal of these next kind of breakouts.
Lee mentioned we had this media panel in the Southeast partners meeting. And one thing that was really interesting was that they said, yeah, we don't want to see any data charts. I mean, you could talk to me about it to help me understand, but I'm not going to use that. I want to know what the impacts are. And I forgot about that conversation we had. So I'm glad you brought that back up. Okay, so any questions? Where's Danielle? Oh, there you are. Just to also let you know, it's very important that the research or the applications that we're creating out of these individual projects related to flash drought, and a number of you are working on them, we really want to make sure they're integrated with each other. And so, for example, we're going to take these, hopefully, the vulnerability maps by crop for flash drought vulnerability maps by crop, and integrate them into what the USDA Climate Hub is doing in terms of their drought resilience and planning products. And so, always be thinking about how you can take your research and transform that into applications and/or operations. So with that, then I think we're going to go ahead and start the breakouts. Okay, so what we have in mind today, where's Joel? Raise your hand, Joel. Where is he? Is he here? Am I just really short? I just want to make sure you're here for in case you have questions. So we have 2 breakouts scheduled. Number one, is there your assignment we did based on where we think you live and work. Several of you in this room are national in scope. So we went ahead and we assign you somewhere. If you feel strongly that you want to be somewhere else and you need to be somewhere else, go for it. We're not taking names. So go to the region you think is most appropriate, but we encourage you as much as possible to follow that list. It is on the participant list. It says what regional breakout you're in. You're either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Is there anyone here? Raise your hand if you do not know what breakout room you're going to. This is great. So when you go up front, there's a list of participants and you'll see your name there. It'll be the last column. And you can also ask Sylvia. She has that list for you. Thank you. And Marina. Okay. The breakout rooms are scattered everywhere. So what I recommend is that right before I'm going to introduce a session and then I'm going to call out breakout 1, Northeast, etc. If you want, you could just follow that person and they will take you to the room. So how this is going to work is the first one is really just a dialogue to answer these 3 questions. What does flash drought look like in your region? Do you have the information you need? And what could we do at a regional level to address the gaps identified? So really, that's where we want to spend most of our time is getting to the now what. And then there's going to be a break, correct? And then you're going to come back here in plenary really quickly for about 15 minutes. We're going to do a quick report out. We thought it'd be useful for each region to hear what they identified as next steps for moving forward. And then you're going to go back to the same room. And we're going to be doing another breakout, but this is going to be what we talked about in the last session, a kind of a drought tabletop exercise, a scenario exercise, if you will, where we'll walk you through 3 different flash drought scenarios, and there'll be conversations about, well, okay, what happens, who does what? And then are people supposed to come back, or is that it? Then that's it? After that last one, I think.
They can come back and say goodbye to the rest of us.
You
but
can come
no,
back
we-
and say goodbye to us, but this is our last, we'll talk again as a plenary after break. Just please come back after break. I know it's hard not to sometimes. Okay, is there go ahead, Marina.
Just, I think for ease of people moving to their rooms, if we can identify the facilitator for
That's
each
what
room.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
you're
what I was
about
gonna
to do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
They're all here.
Okay, so number 1, Northeast breakout group 1, raise your hand. Okay, you're going to follow Sylvia. Why don't you just start following Sylvia now? This is cute. This is like kindergarten. You can leave your things here. There'll be people watching them. Note takers, definitely bring your laptops. Other people do not need laptops. Okay, I'm going to skip the Southeast for a second. If you're in the Midwest, Missouri River Basin, or Pacific Northwest, group number 3, you will be going with Britt, who's right back there. There's Gretel. Okay. If you are in the Southern Plains, Joel, that's Joel. You'll be following Joel for Southern Plains. And I think we set a record for the fewest number of people from California to attend a drought meeting. So we combined you with Nevada and Intermountain West. So I'll wait till Joel takes his group out. So Southern Plains goes with Joel. That's group number 4. Group number 5, Intermountain West, California and Nevada, go with Gretel. And everybody else, you're stuck with me. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Can you please return from the atrium to the plenary room and to your virtual rooms? We have 15 minutes for a short report out, and we'll be returning to breakouts after that. And thank you so much. I think the afternoon's going very well.
Okay, we're about to begin. Can everybody who is outside in the break area, please come back into the plenary room? And can I have all of the breakout facilitators to please come up front with their flip sheets or whatever they're called? Thank you, Joel, for being ready.
We're only recording one question for you.
Yes.
Yes.
Just one or two. That's great. That's great. Is he standing there? Yeah, but just come up. We're going to go really quick. This is going to be super duper quick. So we'd love for everybody to come in here. This is a great opportunity to just briefly hear a little bit about what the other groups came up with. We're focusing on that last question, which is, what can we do as a region? So we're going to start first. What happened with, can I have that back? Anyways, we're going to start first with Joel, who was in group number 4 for Southern Plains.
Okay, these are 4 things that can be done in Southern Plains to help us address some of the needs and gaps that were identified for the region. Number 1, we need more opportunities to facilitate communication. So workshops kind of like this, but there and with other people to share ideas. Number 2, there needs to be more education about flash drought, and so we can then discuss resiliency with people who then understand it better after we educate them. Number 3, intentionally focus on research to operations, because there is a ton of great research happening, but sometimes it either doesn't get translated to operations or it's very slow to get there, and it needs to be intentional. Within that space, we talked about social science as a way to help with that, and also taking a page from the business school playbook of doing value propositions and really understanding what the customer or end user really needs to help our research then focus on addressing those needs and looking at the economic impact of flash drought. And the number 4 is more international collaboration, because there are other parts of the world that have fairly similar climate and are dealing with similar issues. That is my report from the Southern Plains. Next up is Gretel.
And Gretel's from the Intermountain West, California, and Nevada.
So we're overachievers, so we have more than 4, but some of them are very similar to what Joel just mentioned, including the operational component. For the Intermountain West, Nevada, California, also because these are arid, semi-arid, drought-prone areas, collecting sort of case studies and examples of flash drought within the region in order to help define what flash drought actually means for this area. A large connection to wildfire and eddy wildfire, flash drought and red flag warnings, in addition to climate change warming trends, lending to heat waves and flash drought indicators, and how do we plan, prepare, respond, and operationalize those outcomes.
That's great. Britt, you want to come on up? And then Sylvia, why don't you be right behind her?
Hi, my name is Britt. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm with NIDIS, and we actually had 3 regions, so I'll just take as much time as I want now. So we had the Missouri River Basin, the Pacific Northwest, and the Midwest in our group. And so the first thing was actually have operational and maintenance support for the 525 stations going in on the upper Missouri River Basin is a need. We talked about more interpretive resources for indices for communication purposes. So, if you have a soil moisture of some level or a drought indice at some level, what does that really mean for the layperson? A lot of similar thoughts on things like interagency collaboration, both and interstate, as well as those groups plus federal. Money to maintain existing tools. qualified people or those that can be trained, but more people. Some cross-pollination between hazards, especially bringing in various levels of government agencies and industry. Finding better ways to capture lived and shared experience to make data actually meaningful. Citizen science, more citizen science for being able to ground truth and validate some of the products we have and really understand the experience on the ground. And then we also talked about the experience of a drought to kind of light a fire. So, you know, if an area hasn't experienced a bad drought, it's hard to get kind of the buy-in to talk about a drought and what needs to be done. And this affects funding priorities and the people, you know, becoming more involved. So there was interest in doing things like tabletop exercises, like the example we heard today. So.
Great. And then next we have Sylvia representing the Northeast. She has it.
I have the process document and I did not follow the directions, so I don't have a big chart to show you. I did take some notes, also hearing similar sentiments from other groups of things that we talked about in the Northeast region, but some things that were not mentioned so far. Satellite data, the GRACE data set, a little bit too large to handle. The data sets are too large to really make good use of. We'd like to see a more facilitated interface for that. Looking at ponds and reservoirs in the Northeast give us a better indication of flash drought as opposed to drought. So when they start to go, everything else comes after that. Also, one that was rather key that many folks hadn't thought of before was trying to get better wind information. So predictive wind, wind risk tools that might be available soon. Focusing on the time frame was also key. We have the 8 to 10 day outlooks, kind of a bread and butter thing. It was described in our group, but we're looking maybe at the experimental 12 to 18 day products as being key for flash drought. Did I miss something, Art? Those were our biggies.
Now, least Southeast, go team. So we focused on drought early warning information. And when we asked the question of, you know, what gaps are there, there was an acknowledgement that actually we don't even know what exists. And so can we have some kind of better deliberate awareness training, education on what already exists, the pros and cons, similar to what we did here today, but in a more deliberate way across the Southeast, and maybe do that on a regular basis, whether that's webinars, trainings, etc. So that's something that the DOs can definitely take on. And then the second one was, okay, well, maybe we can provide some guidance on how to use this plethora of information that's out there, whether it's, anyways. But then we started to go down that trail, and then we just paused the brakes a little bit and said, actually, this identifying what indicators should use should really be informed by the impacts being felt. And so we went down this path of how useful it could be to have some targeted conversations with different sectors to understand in a flash drought context, if they've had impacts before, what they could be when they're most vulnerable at that calendar time scale. And then use that to develop some guidance on what would be the most efficient early warning information that could be disseminated based on the timing, the sector, the decisions, et cetera. And so that sounds really easy, but anyways, we're going to do what we can. And then there's a couple of other things around communications and data. Economic impacts came back. And I would say whoever tabletop exercises came up as a really great way after we developed this kind of matrix and guidance tools to help walk through with the sectors what it is and how they can use that information. So I think that's it. Okay. Thank you all. I didn't do much. The teams did great. So there was a lot there, and hopefully there'll be some follow-up, especially by the DOs coordinators on a couple of these in terms of what we can do again as partners working at the regional level. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition to the last part of the day, which is breakout number 2. Remember, you're going to stay in your same regions, go to your same groups. But this one is going to be actually a kind of light tabletop exercise where we're going to walk through really quickly a flash drought scenario and begin to think through who does what and the actions being taken, and use that as an opportunity to identify what we could do better. So I think we're ready to go. Is there anything else, Marina or Sylvia, I need to announce? Because after this, everybody's free to go, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there, and we're starting again tomorrow at 8:30 again, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any other questions before I let you all loose? Okay, tomorrow is going to be great. It's a half a day, just giving you a heads up. Some great science talk, emerging science in the morning, and then a way to kind of synthesize what we've heard today in terms of next steps and some tangible actions for moving forward. So please don't miss it if you can. So those who are in Southern Plains, I think everybody knows where their rooms are. You can just go at this point. Same rooms. Thank you very much.